This morning, the annual Turkey Awards on Inside Texas Politics, recognizing the Texas leaders who have had a successful year and those who have not. On the list this weekend, Speaker DADE PHELAN, Governor Greg Abbott, Attorney General Ken Paxton, Texas Mayors Ron Nirenberg, Oscar Leeser, and Maddie Parker, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, State Senators Brian Hughes and Carol Alvarado, plus State Reps Briscoe Kane, Jasmine Crockett, Chris Turner, and Chris Patty, among the many we will discuss right now.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning to you. Hope you had a restful holiday weekend. Not sure if you have any leftovers still in the refrigerator. This morning, though, we are handing them out here on Inside Texas Politics. These are our annual Turkey Awards. We do this every year on the program for Thanksgiving, and here's how it works. Those officials who have had a successful year politically, they get a turkey leg. Those who have not, they get the gizzard. Here to hand out the awards this morning is our roundtable. Ross Ramsey is with us from the Texas Tribune in Austin, as always. Bud Kennedy is a columnist, the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Bernadine Steptoe is a political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. I'll start things off for us here, too, because I know we have a long list to get to, but the first awards one I'm going to give out, it is a turkey leg to the House Speaker, DADE PHELAN. Brand new Speaker of the House this year for 2021, navigating, I'm giving him this because he did navigate the far right in his own party. He kept calm in a wild year of legislating, 3 special sessions. And when Democrats broke quorum and went to D.C., Speaker PHELAN waited them out. So he pushed back against other state leaders. He stopped bills he did not like. He's a conservative, obviously, from the Beaumont area, guys. But certainly on the outside, it appears he is willing to compromise since he is elected by the members of the House and not the state at large. Question for you guys, though, on this first one. Do you think he faces a challenger when he runs again in 2023? Ross?
I don't think so. It's hard to elect a speaker. It's hard to overthrow a speaker. He hadn't really run afoul of many members. I think he gets another term. Afoul.
I like that for this Thanksgiving holiday. Bud, what do you think?
Well, you know, he had a lot of support from the whole body coming in. He had a little mess to clean up that Dennis Bonnet had left. You know, he wound up being Greg Abbott's lead blocker in a lot of ways. He made sure that the legislature did what Greg Abbott wanted and not always what Dan Patrick wanted.
And Bernadine, when he was elected back in January, he was elected unanimously by House Republicans and House Democrats. Is it unanimous again?
I think so.
Think so?
Yes, I do, because keep in mind, he didn't make anybody overly mad as Speaker this time around. And then the Republicans got what they wanted. So why not elect him again? And I think that who's going to challenge him at this point?
Yeah, we shall see. Let's get to the other awards here, because I know you guys have your lists as well. Ross, you are up next with the first gizzard of the morning.
Well, this is my biggest gizzard. A lot of stuff we talk about every week here is political, and it doesn't affect everybody. But last February 14th, we had a storm that affected everybody, and the electric companies and the gas companies and the regulators and the elected class all let us down. A lot of Texas was out of power for 4 days. The lights didn't come on, the heat didn't come on, the water didn't come out. It was a total failure, and they deserve for that a whole platter full of gizzards.
I think the entire state's probably applauding you on that one. Bernadine, you're up next with another turkey leg award.
Yes, and I'd like to give State Senator Carol Alvarado a leg. She did an extremely good job when she did the 15-hour filibuster, knowing that she wasn't going to change anything, but she did not allow the Republicans to just walk and stood 15 hours. 15 long hours with this filibuster, knowing that it was a losing cause in terms of changing any minds, any Republican minds. And I think that she deserves a leg.
All right. Bud Kennedy, taking us back to February for the next award.
Well, you know, we go back to February. I think that to the nation, the biggest turkey in Texas, at least if you judge from the late night comedy shows, is Senator Ted Cruz. He became the punchline for Texas for going to Cancun during the blackouts earlier in the year. Then here at the end of the year, he's wrapped it up by picking a fight with Big Bird over vaccines. We're not giving him a Big Bird today. It's just a little bitty gizzard.
You guys are laughing, Bernadine. Does anyone, do you disagree at all?
I do not disagree.
Yeah.
It's just funny the way that Bud said it.
Indeed so. I am up next with the next one. It is a gizzard as well. This is for State Representative Ryan Guillen. He was a Democrat. He's now a Republican, running as a Republican down in Rio Grande City, a small town along the border just up the river from McAllen or so. He was a conservative Democrat. It's important to point that out, but when redistricting happened, the Republicans carved up his district and made it a Republican district. So Guillen switched parties. It awfully seems self-serving here because he looks like he just really wanted to be, reelected by switching parties, and timing is certainly suspect on that. He was, celebrated as a poster child there for a while, guys. He's adding to the Republican ranks, I guess, at the end of the day. So I guess how long will it last, Ross, for Ryan Guillen?
Well, I guess the upside on this is that the voters get the final chance to say whether this worked or not. He'll go into a Republican primary. The Republicans there might say, who's this? And not do anything for him. They might welcome him in, and then we'll see how well they drew that district.
Yeah, and Bud, Ryan Guillen's running against another Republican, Mike Monreal, down there. And I think he's already going on the attack, against Guillen.
Exactly. Immediately the Republicans say, well, where have you been? Well, we've been here working in the trenches. But, things are changing in the Valley. We'll see how Democrats welcome. Things
are changing in the Valley. Bernadine, do you think that that Guillen is a shoe-in for this seat, or will it be a tough Republican primary?
You know what? At this point, nobody's a shoe-in. But keep in mind, he was not a dependent vote when he was a Democrat. So he might not be a dependent vote when as a Republican, which they might keep that in mind. But at this point, nothing is guaranteed, Jason.
Yeah, maybe he's a swing vote for, either way, but not they necessarily need one of those right now.
Who likes swing voters?
Both parties need the swing voters.
I know.
Ross, you were up next with the next leg of the morning to be handed out.
Well, I have a leg for the state's tethered dogs. I hope they don't get a bone on this. The advocates for animals have been fighting for years to get a new Texas law making it illegal to leash a dog to a tree and leave him out in the sun with no water, no food. They passed a bill in the regular session of the legislature, and the governor unexpectedly vetoed it. He got some blowback. He put it on the bill for the special sessions. They got it passed. The dogs are protected, and they get a leg for that.
They indeed get a leg for that. We're going to be talking a little more about this one a little later in our program as well, too. We're not even to the halfway point yet this morning. We still have a number of names coming up, including Attorney General Ken Paxton, Republican leaders in the legislature, Texas Mayors Oscar Leeser, Maddie Parker, Ron Nierenberg from San Antonio as well. A number of others. You're watching the Turkey Awards, the annual Turkey Awards on Inside Texas Politics. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. We're handing out our annual Turkey Awards like we do every Thanksgiving holiday weekend. We have back our crew here, Ross Ramsey, Bud Kennedy, and Bernadine Steptoe. And Bernadine, you have the next award. It's for one of the state's top officials.
Yes, I'm giving a gizzard to Attorney General Ken Paxton for showing up and being on stage at the January 6th rally, which was put on to overthrow a legitimate election. And as AG, he's the top attorney for the state. So I'm giving him a gizzard for undermining an election that as of this date has not been overturned.
And quick side note on this, since our last program, Louis Gohmert has now said he will be in the race for Attorney General. They're both battling it out, Bud and Ross, for the Trump vote of the Republican Party. Who gets it? Any idea right now, Bud?
Well, Louis' message is Ken might lose. You need to nominate me so I can win. And that's not a very effective message to primary voters. They like who they like. So he's got a tough row with that campaign.
Ross?
Ken Paxton's the guy to beat in this race. He's ahead in the polls. He's the best known name in the race. And Gohmert and the others are going to have to do something pretty quick to beat him in the primary.
Yeah, and Bernadine, you were about to say something when Bud started talking.
Well, no, I was just going to agree with them that he is the candidate to beat, but that still does not remove the fact that I gave him a gizzard for showing up at that January the 6th rally.
All right.
It does not remove the gizzard. You're quite right.
It does remove the gizzard. Bud, you're up next with not just the mayors, Ron Nierenberg from San Antonio and Maddie Parker from Fort Worth, but the mayor's voters, their supporters.
This is a big leg to all the voters of Texas who came thundering back to the polls in May of all times We had incredible turnout for May elections for mayor, city council all across the state. Mayor Nirenberg in San Antonio, that wasn't a very contentious race, but the turnout in San Antonio was up 50%. Maddie Parker was elected mayor in Fort Worth. That was an open seat. Turnout was doubled over the previous election. The voters were all fired up from the previous year. They came back to the polls and made legs for everybody.
Is that a one-off, do you think, or is that something indicative of the future?
Well, the intensity is pretty strong right now. I think the bond elections we just saw, where half the bond elections were defeated in the state, turned out to be the voters speaking again. I think the voters are pretty tuned in, particularly to anything that they see on the network news at night.
Yeah. Let's talk about the next award. This is kind of in direct contrast to what Ross talked about a moment ago. This is a GIZZARD award, and it goes to our governor for, in part, the tethered dogs. Remember, as Ross pointed out a few moments ago, the governor vetoed that bill, and he's running for re-election. I'm sure he got some advice, and it's probably not a good idea to be vetoing a bill that would upset dog owners of any party. So he asked that the legislature bring that bill back, and he ended up passing that one as well. Plus, the other bill that we haven't talked about here, guys, that he did veto, that he brought back, was the funding for the legislature. He did that to punish Democrats at the end of the regular session, rather. He brought that back, and for a lot of the legislative staff who relies on that funding for their salaries, they were pretty nervous there for a while, and it didn't matter if they worked for Republicans or Democrats. They did not have that money. I guess the question is, does any of that stick to Abbott later on, or is this just, it seems like the news cycle is spinning so fast that there'll be plenty more stuff to happen.
Well, I think the fact that, the legislature is funded and the dogs are not tethered probably plays for the governor. I think if you'd left the dogs on the leash and left the legislature off the leash, you'd have some problems here.
Yeah. What do you think, Bud?
Well, the legislature had to constantly do over bills this year. There were a lot of rewrites, but I think that's in part, Abbott could say that's because this was the worst year of bill writing that I've ever seen. Some of these bills had gigantic holes. Look what happened with the critical race theory bills and the way they were turned inside out. The legislature did a terrible job writing some of these bills. They needed to be done over.
They needed to be done over, Bernadine. What do you think?
Well, you know what? I really don't understand why Abbott didn't do his homework when he vetoed it. And then he had to come back in a special session and approve it. But that's the way those special sections happen.
Yeah, indeed so. Ross, you were up next with a leg for a large group of people.
Now, this is for Republican legislators. They had a really good election in 2020, and they came roaring into the 2021 regular session. They passed a lot of bills on issues that are dear to their base, that are red meat Republican issues, from permitless carry of guns to a very restrictive abortion bill, new homestead exemption on school property taxes. They got a lot of funding into a border wall. They passed their voting and elections legislation. From a Republican standpoint, this was a really, really strong legislative year. And, they did what they said they were going to do. That gets them a leg.
Yeah, indeed so. They showed they're firmly in control with everything they passed as well, too. And like you said, it plays very well going into the midterm elections. Bernadine, you're up next, and you're talking about the same topic here, but a different award.
Definitely. I'm giving them a GIZZARD. And that's because of the bills and laws that they passed. The abortion bill, keep in mind, a great number of women, they don't necessarily support abortion, and some of them really don't, but they do support their right to choose. And what happened is the legislature, the Republican legislators, basically is trying, and it took that right away from them, especially. And then also the voter integrity law. To me, they deserve a GIZZARD for the same things that Ross gave them a leg. But anyway, as he said, the Republicans are happy.
They should be happy. They got everything they want. But the Democrats, as you point out, they are going to court over this. They're trying to figure out what to do next and see if they can push back and seeing if any of it plays to 2022 to the midterms and motivates their base.
But you know what, Jason? They should be happy. They control all three houses. Okay, go on.
Indeed so. Go ahead, Bud.
Ross gave him a leg. I think the point is they get a leg for doing what promise they do for representing the voters of their districts. We can argue about how the districts are drawn, but the Republicans are there to represent their voters, and they pass the laws their voters want passed.
Yeah, indeed. So that's probably the bottom line there. Bud, you're up next, and you're going way out to West Texas.
Well, out to West Texas, but all up and down the border. You know, early in the COVID pandemic, which we haven't even talked about barely so far, early in the pandemic, the worst part of Texas, the part of the state hit hardest was El Paso and all those horrible seats from El Paso and all up and down the border. Well,
right.
What happened once vaccines came out was that the mayors and the leaders along the border flipped that message. And El Paso, Laredo, the cities along the border turned out to be the most vaccinated counties in Texas. You know, Mayor Leeser, Oscar Leeser in El Paso, my gosh, he lost his mother and his brother to COVID. He fought Governor Abbott constantly to get stricter restrictions. But now El Paso's COVID cases, the vaccination rate is great, and El Paso's COVID cases, you know, have really slowed a lot of as a result. Up and down the border, Texans are vaccinated up and down the border. Not so well particularly in the suburbs and in the metro areas. And, you know, I want to point out Fort Worth and Tarrant County, worst big city in the state for vaccination.
So a shout out to Ross's hometown of El Paso there. Just a few names left to go this morning. State Senator Carol Alvarado is on our list, Democratic legislators in Texas, and entertainer Alex Jones from InfoWars. Who gets what? Back in a moment on Inside Texas Politics. Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics, the final few names of our 2021 annual Turkey Awards. And I'm up next with the next one. I started the program out. Let me end it here, not totally, but let me just end it with another leg here. And this is for President Joe Biden and the Texas Democrats. Biden's approval rating is low. There is no denying that. But at the end of the day, here we are, 11 months into his presidency, and at the end of the day, he has accomplished a signature achievement he campaigned on. That's the infrastructure bill, a $1 trillion bill passed just this month, bipartisan bill. It's important, I think. Other presidents have tried to pass this. Most recently, President Trump and Republicans did 4 years ago. Biden got it done. They couldn't do it. And now Texas Democrats are bringing home projects all across the state, improving rail for different parts of the state, improving airports all across the state as well, too. So that is worthy of a leg this morning for President Biden and for Texas Democrats. Ross, you were up next with a gizzard, kind of on the same discussion link here, but the opposite award.
Part of the same group, but a different award. Texas Democrats in the legislature went on strike during the first special session this year. They left for Washington. They came back several weeks later, fragmented, didn't accomplish what they had set out to do, managed to unify the Republicans in the legislature against them, and had a walkout for a perfectly good reason that turned out to be a total bust. It was badly planned, badly executed, and it gets them a gizzard.
You know, I was talking to a few of the Democrats, and I said, do you regret doing that? Because at the end of the day, Republicans still got past what they want to pass. They didn't regret that. But, I mean, like you point out, they got nothing out of it, did they?
They hoped to get Congress to pass a law that would preempt the Texas law. Congress didn't do anything about it. Nothing happened as a result of the Texas thing, except that the legislature got delayed. Yeah,
indeed so. Next up, Bernadine Steptoe, you have a leg for an outgoing state senator.
Yes, for State Senator Jane Nelson. She's done an extremely good job the time that she has been in the Senate, and she chaired one of the most important committees, which is the finance. She was over the money. And I think that she has done an extremely good job, and she's going out on top. She's done it, especially in this last session. Yeah. She played a major role. And I think that she deserves a leg.
Chief budget writer for the Senate. What do you think happens to her? Does she come back in to run for something else, Bernadine?
You know what? I think so. She's saying that she wants to spend some time with her family, but she's too effective. And I think that she's going to come back. Keep in mind, I'm not saying that she's going to run for lieutenant governor, but this is Dan Patrick's last time, according to what he has said. So that's going to be open as well. And she's just a good senator. She's a good legislator.
Yeah, Republican from North Texas. What do you guys think? Does she come back politically, Bud? What do you think?
Jason, I think we'll see her on Inside Texas Politics giving some opinions now and then, probably, about what's going on in the state. She probably will not come back right away, but she might be tempted back after a couple more cycles. I think that did this tremendous hard work she's one of the most powerful women in the history of Texas, and the work she's done of getting, particularly child protective, health care, teachers getting the money they need into the budget when there were a lot of opponents who wanted to keep cutting. She held the line.
Yeah, and considering her power and effectiveness, Ross, people are talking, saying, I can't believe she's might be leaving for good. Does she come back, you think?
It's really interesting. Her first session, she came in and she was wagging her finger at the senators who were there, and she voted against the budget. She got chewed out on the floor by the then head of finance. And as she leaves, she's the head of finance herself. They're naming the finance committee room after her. She's really grown over the last 30 years.
Wow.
I can't imagine this without her, but she deserves a rest if she wants one.
Yeah, we shall see what happens. All right, last award this morning. Bud, this is for you.
Well, you wouldn't think that a dentist's son from Rockwall could cause so much trouble. But when we talk about Texans at the Capitol riot, we usually talk about Ken Paxton, but I think we need to be talking about Alex Jones. Alex Jones, the talk show host, entertainer from Austin. His InfoWars is watched worldwide. Alex Jones, was sued by the Sandy Hook parents, defaulted on some of those cases in defamatory suits. Then he wound up, now he's being subpoenaed to testify of his role. Called all his supporters to come to the Capitol and fight. And what happened up there is that even in his divorce case, his lawyer said that he's only an entertainer. People need to remember that.
Yeah, and indeed so. He is an entertainer, but he is very influential as well. Guys, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching as well. We always appreciate your feedback on our picks for the Turkey Awards. You can find me on Twitter at Jason Whiteley. Hope you have a great week. Take care.